Hey.
GM, everybody. How you doing? Did I blow out your ears, Drac?
No, I was moving my volume around here. The boys are back. Yes.
Boys are back in town. I'm
I
currently on a team's meeting.
apologize. I missed 2 episodes. Had to go down to Florida, take care of some business. You know what I'm saying? Had to chill out in the swamp a little bit, contemplate life, where things are heading, what's the next move. So good trip.
Did you do mushrooms?
Yeah, I did 5 milligrams with Brian.
It
Kind of
was a real searching weekend for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really was. So, but yeah, I'm back now. Oh man, I just realized you have Halo on the screen.
This is Halo Kart, I think. It's Mario Kart Halo. I never heard of this before, but it looks pretty funny. But yeah, we're glad to have you back, man. You know, we needed you, dude. I was up here struggling, dude, suffering, dude, on the last episode. Hey, this is true. Your book stands are empty, Drac. What's happening, dude?
This is funny. Even the book stand. Yeah, I've had to sell everything. So,
Yeah. And if you want the book stands, I hear they're going for 20.
Yeah. If you want these solid craftsmanship.
Hell yeah. But yeah, man. While you were gone, we had our highs and lows. We had a little bit of a we're back moment, and then it went quickly back into a all is lost moment. So I'm assuming you weren't looking at the charts and all in the swamp because I'm from Florida. I've been out in the swamp, ain't shit out there but skeeters and gators, brother. So
that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's still just it's hard to tell where things are going. It's like we had some good news, then it's like like government shutdowns ending, but we still have this like tariff decision kind of looming, and I think right now we're just being chopped up, honestly.
Yeah.
We're just when we're crabbing, it's like you get chopped up trying to time the bottom, time the top. I'm hoping that we see a shift from that and resume up. But yeah, I think it's just still a lot of uncertainty in the market. So, people are gonna have some fun, and liquidate you.
So like we've got the macro narrative right now, right? Which is like 4-year cycles over versus this time is different. And you got all kinds of people battling this out with pretty decent arguments on both sides, right? Then we have a micro narrative here on Sonic, which is like, I don't know, Chicken Little, skies falling. Yeah, it's been a pretty chaotic like month, and I don't think we're gonna get really any clarity anytime soon. It looks like this chop is just going to continue at least for like another month or so.
Yeah, and I think the first point you made was something worth touching on. I've seen some good posts from some accounts that like I actually, enjoy their opinion or whatever, where some of this is being contemplated as people that are solely playing the 4-year halving cycle. There were some figures behind it in terms of like BTC outflow and everything else that a lot of people are just, taking their profits from the cycle. And, we really got to see what happens these next few months in terms of like, okay, like, if we hold over 100K, some of this macro starts to hit. I don't think the cycle's over. You know what I mean? And I think that's going to be the real test is, we're getting towards end of the year here, towards what would traditionally be the end of this halving cycle. And yeah, I mean, we're about to see the real test, like in terms of, are we still like a slave to this cycle, or is it really going forward be different? Like, a lot of us have felt like.
Yeah, I'm kind of this idea that like the cycle probably is still kind of relevant, but I think like the negative impacts of it might be dampened by a lot of like the economic. Well, I don't know. That's kind of crazy to say. Like there have been a lot of like really positive movements in terms of integration with the greater economy through the ETFs. So that should provide some stability. but we also do see, you know, outflows from these ETFs now, right? Because people are getting kind of cold feet for various reasons, right? There are other trades out there. They're outperforming Bitcoin. You know, it's not really necessarily like all the Bitcoin OGs that are selling for like billions of dollars. I can't really blame them, right? Like you turn $600 into $600 million. Yeah, fuck yeah, I'd sell, dude. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I would eat ramen for the rest of my life. But at the same time, you know, it's like that kind of maybe shakes a little bit of confidence in the idea of this being just like a store of value, right? Typically people amass big gold reserves and just hold on to them until they die, basically. So it's interesting. We'll see. I mean, it's not the most, I'm not gonna make a prognostication here, right? Because then I'd be giving away my alpha.
I mean, I just think that the question on everyone's mind is, even for someone like me that believes that for things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, maybe even Solana, I don't think we ever see one of these like 60, 70% retraces ever again. Even believing that, where there will be like some more stability anchoring the market, the question still looms: will there be conditions for a real alt season?
Yeah. Now, I've been reading the Wall Street Journal a lot lately, Drac. So I want to bring up a theory I have here that would affect this directly, right? So alt cycles are driven primarily by a lot of like retail interest generating activity on networks, right? Like it's, you know, the institutional money is good, but it's like the little guys doing a lot of little transactions that kind of gets the institutions interested. It's kind of how I've come to understand it, or at least that's been the philosophy that most people have employed. And right now with the macro situation, I want to describe how I see it. Anyone here can challenge me. I'm interested in any criticisms of this. But so we've had quantitative tightening for a while, right? We've got these tariffs up. Tariffs are push up the inflation on the goods because they make everything cost more. Hurts the consumer. Quantitative tightening also somewhat hurts the consumer, but it's making the dollar stronger. Now, what we're about to see here is it seems like Trump's tariffs are going to get like ripped off essentially by the Supreme Court. They might say that he has no authority to do this. They get removed. Quantitative easing starting. So like you know, like Goku puts on body weights and then he takes them off and he's way stronger.
Yeah.
Kind of like the tariffs and the quantitative tightening were like those body weights, and they're both going to get removed at the same time. So we might just see a massive explosion in consumer like spending power. And if he's floating these ideas of stimulus as well, I could see 2026, like Fallout Zone saying, shaping up quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that,
but this
exactly
is a good
what
point.
You're saying, you know, is that we have these big macro things looming. We still haven't, you know, I forgot the figure. I want to say it was something like it usually takes between 4 to 6 months for any kind of rate cut to really start to like, you know, have like a real effect. So essentially, if we're looking at that timeline, we haven't even like gotten any of the effects of the first rate cut. And we, you know, and at this point we have 2 and probably 1 more here in December. So yeah, we don't have the effects from the rate cuts. We don't have the QE effect yet. You know, that's kind of like what I'm waiting for, is mostly like, okay, like what are the effects when money is cheap again? But yeah, you know, you have a good point that if you look at the last 2 like alt seasons or whatever, there does have to be like this retail effect in the equation. So, you know, that's a good point with the Fallout Zone saying here, talking about how like, you know, credit card debt's at an all-time high. You know, these people aren't going to be spending their cheaper money or their stimulus on crypto. Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it. It's kind of hard to tell, you know.
He's kind of right here, but I also want to point out that gambling has exploded. Like retail gambling is like insane. Like we're seeing Polymarket integrated everywhere. Sports betting has been huge for a while. It doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. So like while the average consumer does have high credit, the average consumer is also bad with their money. So if they get more money, they tend to run up their credit more or gamble with it, which I mean, I don't know. Investing is kind of like gambling when you don't know what you're doing. DeFi particularly more so, even more accessible. So there is some possibility there. I think the biggest risk in that narrative is like, how does crypto make itself more appealing than, say, betting on the Packers or whatever?
Yeah, and I wanted to find, I was digging through my bookmarks really fast because like what I wanted to reference with the gambling was, I probably don't have time to find it because it'll take too long. But basically, there, you know, it's a GCR post, and it stuck with me. He posted it 3 or 4 years ago, where he was basically like, the things that I will always bet on. And he was like, the things I will always bet on is that people will basically, even though they're making less money, they will find cheaper ways to gamble, which is exactly where we're at right now. The idea being, hey, in however many years, it'll be harder than ever for the average guy to be able to afford going to Vegas. But I will bet on you give that guy a cheap, easy way to gamble. That's going to happen. So basically, he's like, you know, I will always bet on cheap gambling, loneliness, despair, like, you know, just, and it's kind of bleak when you say it that way, but it's true. I think that maybe that's the angle that we're not necessarily looking at. Like maybe that's the lens we're not looking at it through, is we're thinking about, oh, we're just thinking about exotic alt tokens, when the big picture is, yes, but gambling is like at an all-time high right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that was that is what got retail into crypto at all, was the gambling like returns that they saw. It wasn't, most people do not give any kind of care in the world about self-custody or any of that stuff. So it is quite interesting. There was like a battle to, I don't want to go down too far down that path. We got a lot of other stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
But I want to point out this: the 2K Stimmy paid in stable coins, and also Zorg Blab brings up a good point. It'll never happen. But can you imagine if we could Sybil, if it was a stable coin airdrop to our wallets? Imagine Sibling the U.S. government's airdrop, dude.
Yeah, they're like, I got 100 checking accounts.
Yeah, people do that. You know, they'll claim like 4 or 5 different welfare checks.
I tend to agree with Zorg here, just that it's a nice thought, of course, because we know what stimmies are capable of in the hands of people where, like I was saying, now have access to extremely cheap gambling. But I tend to agree with this. It's like stimulus checks are like a tactic that are just, you know, I think almost every president at some point has made some kind of comment about a potential stimulus when they're trying to shape some kind of financial policy. Like, well, yeah, but if, you know, they don't get rid of the tariffs, we'll give everybody $2,000, when it's like, yeah, I mean, they're probably getting rid of them. So
yeah, it seems a little bit like a bribe, right? Like to try and like bribe the populace to support you or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been employed like every cycle.
It's been employed for thousands of years at this point. You go all the way back to the grain dole in Rome if we wanted to. But I like this idea by Fiam Lewis here. You have your people reach out to my people. We should build a poly market on Sonic and call it Make Gamble. I think that's actually a really great idea.
I like it.
Make Gamble. You know what you can do? You should bet on the fries index.
Yeah.
Price of McDonald's fries averaged across every store, every region.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think sorry, there's some good comments today. I guess with that, I feel like we've kind of bypassed talking about the Bitcoin chart.
Let's pull it up anyway. Let's
just take a look. Now,
that's great.
You know, now don't get too scared, because this was just me drawing my own little imaginary fun lines, right? Theoretically, I was just trying to show that we had a really big wedge thing kind of going on here, and it was playing out pretty well. Obviously, somewhere around here, you're looking at like October 10th event, which the good news is we're very much like in this kind of like liquidity zone. So I feel like if we bounce out of this zone, probably looking pretty good. But, you know, this is the Bitcoin weekly, so much higher time frame here. That's kind of the state of Bitcoin. I mean, as you can see over here, we're having a red day. Everything's red right now. But, you know, we've been a little choppy, right? Oh, Fallout Zone here says, are you able to look at Sonic now that Dracula isn't part of Sonic Labs? Hey, that's a good question. You know what?
Yeah, since you asked, you know.
What do we have here? Also, I was asked, I've had a few comments in here, like, saying if I'm going to address anything. I can make it very brief. I did recently, not recently, I guess it was announced, pretty much yesterday. I did kind of like step down from my role, actual like labs role. Nothing insane. Like, I have a builder background. I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years and kind of tried things on the network level. Wasn't totally like my cup of tea. I'm, much more accustomed to trading and shit posting and kind of like having my own schedule and doing what I want. And yeah, I mean, it was just kind of on my mind for a minute because as Mitch came in, like I think people would actually appreciate to know this, that, they've really been shifting the internal structure and it's much more like a traditional company structure. Well, that was even kind of pushing me further to like, oh man, I got like, all these meetings and calls and, very much more like a traditional company structure. So yeah, I figured, was kind of starting to feel that way. And, they're still working on some new hires and stuff. I figured it was probably a better time to make this move than, when they've like reorganized everything internally and have new people. And I'm somewhere in that, in that cog, so, but yeah, as you can see, I'm still here doing GMSONIC. That's not going to change. I viewed myself for a long time, even before GMSONIC, like Phantom days. I've always kind of been like adjacent to labs in terms of, doing spaces or talking about projects or promoting Phantom or promoting Sonic. So just felt like, hey, this is still like kind of like more like where I belong, is doing this kind of stuff, than being like an official labs team member. So yeah, we're not going anywhere. We're still going to do our thing. Thanks to everybody that was supportive of my initial joining of the team. And of course, everyone's been, really nice about, me kind of like stepping down, but really not a lot to say, honestly. Just wanted to get back to what I'm used to doing. And, no drama, no falling out, no major event, nothing juicy to really tell you. But that's the story. Yeah.
Well, I mean, on the bright side for everyone else, it's kind of a great thing because we get to experience more Dracula Presley projects, dude. Start pumping out, right?
Yeah. And I've had like several, I've had 3 or 4 projects that were kind of like, I'm bad about like getting halfway through a project and then I'm like a dog of a car and I like start doing something else. And that had been in my mind as well, was just kind of like, hey, like, it's next to impossible for me to continue to work on projects and, be with labs on a network level. There's always going to be like a conflict of interest, So that was kind of part of it too, was like, I'm kind of missing working on projects and, I have to kind of like step away to, continue doing that. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a boring exit story.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I'm sorry about that.
Well, look, Drac, you can't say it, but I'll say it. Well, what happened was Drac accidentally killed Mitchell's dog. Okay. They were windsurfing and he got too much air and he cut his head off. It was a horrible story, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, windsurfing is just, I don't recommend any kind of windsurfing with pets.
Especially not a dog. They're not built for it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, like I said, unfortunately, kind of a boring story. Maybe I should have come up with something more entertaining, but that's all I'll really say about it. I'm not going to go on and on. It's already been a few minutes, but the make a very long story short. Yes, Sonic chart right here. We're looking at it. It was a brutal, October 10th sent us spiraling out. Obviously, a lot of bad times for a lot of people. This October 10th wick liquidated a ton, wick liquidated a ton of people. You're still seeing fallout from those events, like with some of the stable tokens, not just on Sonic, but you're seeing this crypto wide that you're still having bodies floating up here and there from October 10th, projects that were trying to hang on, or they're trying to fill a hole that was created from assets that got liquidated or whatever. And yeah, I mean, the good news is this is the daily. We've had a tumble, kind of like consolidating here. We're moving back into the alligator, which as you can see here, it's like downtrend. We're moving back up. Typically on the alligator, if you're playing it, you kind of get back to the middle line here, and that kind of means that's like a sign of reversal. So I think that let me knock on this table or one of these fine shelves that are empty. I think that was the bottom. I think we've found the bottom. So hopefully we begin to march back with the rest of the market. I think everything's gonna, as we clear up some of this macro stuff, we're gonna start moving our way back up.
Yeah, inshallah, my brother. Hopefully this was the bottom. Hopefully that was the bottom. It kind of looks like it with that sharp reversal there, but again, like you're saying, the macro environment seems anemic. So it appears to me that any kind of reversal for a product with this age is not going to be significant or long term until things start switching around. But the good news is things should be switching around pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. I think you've gone, dude.
Oh no, I'm here. Getting a interesting message that I maybe will comment on later. So
okay, cool.
Like a Dr. Disrespect cell phone moment. We'll see.
Oh yeah, dude. What was that? Wasn't that like he got notified like midstream that he was like,
I think the cops were at his house or something.
Holy shit.
I can't remember. All right, so it wasn't quite that, but some potential big news, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, the tech still slaps, dude.
The tech still slaps. The fundamentals are still there. Yes, we got a lot of stuff. We gotta, there's still a lot of things we gotta improve, but I think that it's also just been a very turbulent couple weeks. Like I said, large depegs, balancer hack, so much stuff going on. So inshallah we will win.
Yeah, we just have to endure and persevere, dude. That's all we can really do at this point, right? Endure and persevere, guys. Keep the faith alive. You know what I'm saying? Savvy girl style.
Oh,
but
man.
Yeah, looking at this here, right, Drac, it looks like you got that kind of a resistance at like 15 cents.
Yeah.
Like poked through it, rejected.
Which, on a reversal, when you have a resistance, whether it's, a support or a resistance, it's always a lot more natural to kind of tap it, get smacked down once or twice. So, all in all, it's, I think it's like a good, like organic looking move. You know what I mean? That we've found the bottom.
Yeah, I agree. It also seems to me like kind of sentiment is kind of bottoming out. I think for situations like this, you kind of do want when the market has been so heavily downward forced, especially with all the leverage being wiped out of the market, it is kind of like everything being wiped clean is what it feels like, right? Like you kind of got to start back from square one at this point.
I mean, 1010 is like such an interesting event because I feel like in a lot of ways where everything is right now is, to me, really more of a sign of strength. If 1010 had happened 2 years ago or whatever, it would be signaling like nuclear winter, kind of like when FTX collapsed, when we were already we were kind of slowly grinding down into bear market territory. FTX kind of signaled, nuclear winter is here. We've obviously beyond the liquidations on a wide scale level, like I said, you still, so far since 1010 on a weekly basis, there has been something that's gone belly up that was, you know, hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion. You know what I mean? So to me, that's like a sign of strength, really, that we've taken all those hits and Bitcoin's still over 100K. Yeah, we've dipped a little below, whatever, but Ethereum's over 3,000, Bitcoin's over 100K, you know, tells me we're going to survive this thing.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, I think would really help Sonic right now, dude. Euro stablecoin.
Yeah.
Euro, dude, for the Euro stablecoin.
And yeah, I mean, we've just seen the stable token thing has been interesting to an extent of like, you're seeing these like issues with things calling themselves stable tokens that are really more of like hedge fund tokens or treasury tokens.
Yeah.
And that has been interesting to, I mean, I got burnt on some stuff where, you know, thought my stables were in just like a safe vault earning 1% or whatever. And then you come to find out like, hey, yeah, they were in a vault, but you know, on 3 or 4 levels down from everybody rehypothecating, it had exposure to stream or whatever. So that is something I'm like interested in to see going forward, is how do people tackle this issue we've had repeatedly with people telling you something's a stable token or a safe vault or whatever, but really people can like move the funds however they please, you know, because they're like a money manager.
Yeah, this is kind of like the Paulson's got a good point here. You have to always question where the yield is coming from. But I think part of the struggle with that is like, even when they tell you like, all right, so in that example, right, we've all seen the meme shirt, right? Like it's backed by this, backed by that, backed by this, that's rehypothecated at this, right? So like you would have to know what each of those entities actually do, how they operate, in order to have a clear understanding of what additional risk they're actually adding. Because we talk about this a lot, right? Where it's like every contract that your funds interact with, each additional one is like expanding the risk surface area, right? That's another part where your funds could be lost. But we don't necessarily talk about specifically the types of contract, like there's specific types of contracts and interactions that are much more risky than others. And so like, unless you know exactly how they're using the funds, it's a little bit more complicated, right? Like it's one thing for you to rehypothecate my funds into like a lending market or something. It's another thing to rehypothecate it into like a black box like Stream was.
Yeah.
So yeah, every stable should be backed 1-to-1 with something like USDC. Well, you got to, they want to squeeze more yield out of it. So that's kind of the thing, is you got to squeeze more yield out of it. You do have to engage in some sort of lending.
And that's how we got into this mess was, you know, people just kind of, you know, fighting for that extra, because when it comes to stables, it's like an extra quarter or 0.5% is enough to, you know, swing the tide for, you know, people to use your protocol instead of somebody else. And yeah, I mean, that's how we got into this mess was, you know, people just getting riskier and riskier with the strategy. I mean, you know, right before Stream, you know, we had Main Street who were running, I guess, if I remember right, more like delta neutral kind of whatever strategies. But, you know, a lot of these situations were caused by, you see your liquidation and you go, oh, well, I'm setting up my liquidation to be 70, 80% lower than what the current price is, because there's no way that this thing's going to go 70, 80% in a day. Well, surprise, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what happened. So yeah, I mean, it's scary stuff. I mean, it's definitely had me on edge where it's like, yeah, now it's like, I think you really have to make sure that you know, it's just like the old meme, you know, it's like, if you don't know where the yield's from, you're the yield. You know, it's like people are just gonna have to like really be mindful.
I kind of think of it, it's almost more helpful to think of it as like, who is my actual counterparty here? Like, how many counterparties am I actually dealing with? Because it seems like oftentimes what it will be like 1 or 2, like, okay, they're a vault and they're powered by Veda or whatever. that's 2, right? That's how I would think about it. Veta's probably using someone else, but it's like I'm probably dealing with upwards of like 4 apparently, and it's just goofy as fuck. I agree with you. I honestly think a lot of these products should not be called stable coins. There's probably a better term for it, like a yield coin or something.
Yeah, treasury token, hedge fund token, yield token, whatever.
A bond or a bill or some shit. Like it's crazy because it's like it doesn't communicate the risk effectively enough. People think of them as just like, oh, it's just like a dollar.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the thing about it too is I think I would find myself still, to be honest, if you told me, hey, you put your USDC in here and you can make 20-30% APR, but there's all this sketchy stuff under the hood. To be honest, there's probably still a part of me that's like, I'll allocate a little bit to that, see how it goes. But the issue is just people that were like full ported with their stables into these strategies, because it's like, like, sure, I might just throw some money at it, just treat it like anything else in crypto, but a lot of people thinking they were like protected or safe or whatever. Yeah, hate to see it. I know a lot of people that have gotten burnt these last couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm one of them, dude. I feel like everybody gotten burned. But hey, it's not all bad, right?
Yeah, Yankee says leverage was a mistake. Spot and chill is the way. I agree. I was one of these guys for years. When I started in crypto, I blew up accounts constantly on BitMEX. Wanted to be a big shot trader, was always trading leverage. And that was kind of a big shift between last run for me and this run, or this market was very much so. Like somebody made a good point once and it stuck with me, which was buying spot in crypto is still leverage, because you cannot buy spot in the stock market and have 20, even like a small gain in crypto, like a 15, 20, 30% gain in a few days is for the most part unheard of in the stock market, unless, you're in our crazy tech bubble, like, but in general, buying spot, you're already leveraged in terms of assets exposure. So I still leverage trade. I just treat it like, you should treat it like that's money that, you're going to the casino with. That's money that if you lose it, you're not going to like freak out. And, I still do that on Hyperliquid. I threw a little money into a Hyperliquid account. I've been trading on it for over a year. Sometimes I'm doing on a hot streak and it's up. Sometimes it's down, but I just don't really touch it because I'm just like, this is just kind of like gambling.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially at the leverage that people tend to do it at. And, I think, there's a lot of like negative kind of perception about these things that is like generated by people kind of posting their wins, kind of like flaunting your wins into casino. So it's like convincing people that they should do it more. There's also like this element of it, like leverage is like a useful financial tool if you know what you're doing. But a lot of times people are playing with it not as a tool, but as like a gambling instrument, right? So
and that's something you got to think of too, is like a lot of people that are really successful with leverage are because of their size. So, a lot of accounts, if somebody is trading with enough size, you only got to be levered up 1 or 2x to make significant money, and it's relatively safe, like, you probably like literally don't have a liquidation point basically. And those are the people that are truly like making money on this. There's people that have so much money that they can run like large size trades just to like rake in fees. They don't even actually care about the real movements. So
that Fall Zone's got here too many trying to make it back after losses and end up losing more with leverage. And that's like the core gambler loop, right? Is like you're down from when you enter the casino, so you want to win it back, or you're up a little bit, and so you just want to keep going. But the thing about a guy with like a large stack, right, is if they're smart, they're sizing properly. So it's like if I have $1 million, and sure, let's say I love leverage, I want to gamble the catch the knife, right? I'm going to 25x catch the knife, right?
Yeah.
If I could just keep throwing like $100 or $1,000, a very insignificant part of my port at this bet, and eventually it might pay off, and if I might break even or even higher, but it's not like it's a size thing. If you're coming in with a $10,000 port, you should be throwing bets of like $10 roughly. That's the strategy.
Yeah, and no, that's true. Falls, and I did see that often as well. Like people basically revenge trading. I don't know.
Stinky's trading 100% portfolio and 100x leverage.
I pretty much started as that guy. It a lot of hard lessons.
Oh yeah, a lot of hard lessons. A lot of nights eating beans, brother. All right, but let's move on a little bit to something maybe a little bit more cultural here. Although I think it's kind of interesting. There's something we can maybe learn about this from like incentive structures on labs, right? Or how they approach it. This is kind of what you were doing with Kaido, dude, a little bit. You should have done it a little bit more publicly like this. Like ICO Beast. You guys know, if you guys know this. Oh, this one's better. This is the actual post.
Yeah.
So you want to tell the story? You go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I've definitely been enjoying this story. Yeah, coming from, when we had Kaido farmers introduced into our eco. Well, there's this guy, ICO Beast. If you're not familiar, I told Corval earlier, he's basically like the Kaido final boss. Just a renowned, I think his story is something crazy. Like he came in with very little money. He built up an account. He just, farms new projects. So basically he was kind of boasting that he like was getting this like top allocation from megaETH. And I think that was, they had all these rules, right? So basically he makes a post. When he says hedge, he's basically saying like, I need to figure out how to like sell some of my allocation. So what immediately happened was apparently top KOLs or whatever had a lock, and they were part of their deal was they could not partake in any kind of like, pre-market selling or anything like that. So he made this post, and then I have the response here. Basically, like megaETH themselves just immediately said, well, now you get nothing. You're locked, like now we're like making your allocation zero. So I gotta say, it warmed my heart a little bit just to see one of these guys, see one of these farmers kind of take a huge L.
Yeah, I mean, because also it's like, what is he hedging here, dude? It got an airdrop. Like he's hedging the free money he's receiving.
Yeah,
which is like I mean, fair enough. You see the million on the paper and you want to realize it, or you want some assurances that it can be realized. But it's also not like he's like a core contributor, which I would say is even more justifiable, right? I want to justify my time in. He's an AI slot poster. That's right, Falls. He may not be AI, but he is a slot poster.
And the idea was, megaETH like ran this like very strange, like not strange, but it was a very unique pre-sale. So to also put this out there, you had a max, if you were like, I guess like a special KOL or whatever, you would get access to this like max allocation potential. So he did have to put money in to get this max allocation. But yeah, basically what they said was, I mean, as per the rules, we're going to give you a refund, but your stuff's at zero.
Yeah. This is also interesting to me because this is an example of kind of like influencer brain or like KOL brain or something, where it's like, why did you even post this, dude? Like there was literally no reason at all to post this, like your private financial dealings, right? Like,
I mean, it's just somebody that's like
an OTC deal. Why would I go to Twitter to tell everyone that I'm going to do it?
Yeah. And he was already like under some fire because he made this post a few days ago where he got ratioed by Kobe, but basically, he's made all this money being a farmer. And then he has this post about how like, if you are just a farmer, you're a mercenary and you're a piece of shit and blah, blah, blah. So, you had like Kook in there, like you were literally a farmer. I was looking for the Kobe one.
I got it here. It was on it was on his original post. pretty wild to call airdrop farmers low value and then publicly signal your intention to dump everything, buy puts before you've even received your tokens. What value has been provided here? It's funny how much CT complains about VCs dumping over the counter or hedging locked tokens, but then instantly mimic the behavior the first chance they get. Very true.
Yeah. And I think it's just like, I think the guy just kind of lost the plot. You know what I mean? Like I said, he started as a very, you know, that was like his whole story. It was like, I had no money. Now I'm rich. You know, I farm everything. So it was kind of funny that he's just basically like, yeah, like I'm good, but most farmers are bad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of the good ones. You know, I'm one of the good ones, dude.
Yeah.
Very, very silly little thing, but it does remind me a little bit of like kind of a lot of like the tensions and anxieties around like airdrops and ICOs, all these things, right? Like there's so much tension around them and judging other people's behavior, right? Which I think it's fair to judge ICO Beast here, especially because he violated the terms of the agreement. But you know, it kind of just reminds me of our experience here with Kaido, airdrop farming and stuff. It's a known thing. It's kind of like mercenary or whatever. But at the end of the day, we have to realize it's fundamental human nature, right? I think that's kind of the point that Kobe's making here, right? Is CT likes to complain about doing this stuff, but when they have the opportunity to do so, they will do so.
Yeah. And I think InfoFi in general, like even something like Kaido, like I think it does have a place where it can be like utilized effectively, but very easy to also just be, you know, kind of like a waste of money, you know, like it has to be used correctly. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting shift because if you think about it, basically like Kaido is more of like being an airdrop farmer with like an extra step or two. At least it's making you do something. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, it's, you know, like Zach XBT had that famous post where he said, like, I've run the numbers and I don't touch anything that's running like an InfoFi campaign, basically, which was interesting. But yeah, I think maybe we're seeing late stage InfoFi. You know, we already saw late stage airdrop farm meta. Maybe that's where we're at on the InfoFi, you know. So what's next?
Yeah. I don't know. It's quite interesting. I think we're continuing to see like people trying to find new ways to incentivize behavior with tokens or like, you know, but they're finding out that like it's a lot more complicated, like to get something to stick or to get the result that you wanted. I mean, it's been years now, but it's like, you know, when you shift from like airdrop to Kaido, right, you're kind of trying to say like with the airdrop, you're usually trying to incentivize activity, like prove that our system works, like show that our system works, use it, you know, which I think is probably a better sticky mechanism because if the product is good enough, people generally will stick. That's like that's why Hyperliquid was successful. They give a big airdrop, but people aren't going to leave because they like the product for the most part. But with Kaido, it's like, I want you to help me market this basically, but you don't know anything or care anything about this product or are invested in any way other than I'm paying you to do it. It's like worse than engaging a marketing agency because at least the marketing agency's success is primarily depending on this campaign working or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, it's interesting stuff. I think we should really keep an eye on it some more because I'm interested to see what new incentive programs Sonic might come up with in the future. And this is the kind of stuff they got to pay attention to. Speaking of, this is another thing that's kind of like outside of Sonic, but it's still an important thing to pay attention to because this is like industry trends and, you know, perhaps mechanisms that Sonic's willing to adopt to generate more revenue distribution, but probably not. Michael Ergarov criticizing Uni, saying they chose an inferior mechanism of revenue distribution. Says things are proceeding as planned because he's an evil mastermind. And that's a nice research paper where he compares VE locks and buy and burn. We can dive into that a little bit more, but I feel like we should have started with Drac. What is the Uniswap thing, dude? Like, they're finally turning on the fee switch, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the idea is that for a long time, they have not had like fees that have done anything like really purposeful. Obviously, the buy and burn meta is like pretty, it's a big thing right now. So what they're proposing is they will turn on actual protocol fees, which is, a small additional fee on top of whatever the swaps and everything else are. The idea is that the protocol fees that are earned will be used for buy and burn of Uni. They're also going to start using, they have Uni Chain, which they're going to start using the sequencer fees that they earn for Uni Chain to also buy and burn. There's some other like kind of weird ideas in there, like builder protocol fee discount auctions and some other stuff. But something I do think is cool is, they've come out with these aggregator hooks. So the idea is if you're on a chain that Uni's on, you can basically like kind of like dip into their liquidity for swaps and other things like that. So same idea with that. They're like, hey, if you hook in our liquidity to your, DEX or whatever, like we're also going to earn fees on that. So basically like just funneling, obviously like Uni is still huge. So, I mean, even a tiny fee is probably going to generate a lot of money. So it's interesting to kind of like see like what's going to happen with Uni, the token itself.
Yeah. So from my understanding, they're using a lot of these fees to just buy back and burn the token, which is like, I've noticed a fairly popular revenue distribution model, if that's what you want to call it, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, like today's like a red day, obviously, but still 25% pump on the news, basically on a already fighting like a red day on Ethereum. So,
I mean, to be honest, this has kind of been like they've been sitting on this for a while as a possibility, right? Like this is something that people have been talking about for years about Uniswap. Like, when are they gonna, distribute something?
Yeah, yeah. When are they gonna give some money back?
Which, interesting. I think because of maybe Uniswap's privileged position as like in some ways like a big time, not quite first mover, but a massive like a protocol, right? A very important protocol in the DeFi space and crypto entirely. They could sit on something like this for an opportune moment. So it makes me kind of wonder like why now?
Yeah.
But again,
something else, one thing I forgot to touch on is part of the proposal is also that they will burn 100 million tokens based on that would have been how many tokens so far in the history of Uniswap. That's how many tokens they could have like bought and burnt, which is also pretty significant. I mean, because Uni price is almost $9, so you're talking about almost $1 billion burn.
That's wild, dude. That's wild.
I mean, it's like they're talking about like basically like burning $1 billion.
Yeah, so bullish, I suppose. I don't know. Hopefully. I wanted to point out that Egorov posted like this research paper, used as an opportunity, good marketing strategy here. He used their announcement to draw attention to a research report they did a couple of months ago, April 2025. I'm not going to dive too deep into it here because one, I'm stupid, but two, because the key thing here, the main assertion he's making is the data reveals that model locks approximately 3 times more tokens than would be removed through a burn mechanism, illustrating its superior impact on token scarcity. Basically, he's making the point that like VE tokenomics like token locking is superior in terms of revenue share than buy and burn because more people will essentially lock than you will be able to buy and burn. But I also think there might be some specific differences between the protocols that might make buy and burn more effective in certain instances than others. The research paper was pretty much just looking at Curve. So he's kind of just saying like, yeah, we picked the best option for us.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I mean, to his credit, obviously Curve is a huge protocol and been around a long time. And I think what he's trying to say is, hey, we've been giving people value from the start.
Yeah.
So,
but it is tough because that doesn't make him a very appealing trade because it's like, again, people like the new thing in crypto. So like what that's saying is there's no, like he's making the most boring argument to most crypto people he can make, which is it's going to be long-term steady growth. People don't want that. People want to see the Uniswap $9 billion, trillion, quadrillion dollar buy tomorrow, and then they can front run it.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like you said, they've obviously been sitting on this. They've sat on this for years. People have talked for years about, you know, them flipping the fee switch and what could happen if they did. And yeah, I mean, it seems like the timing was probably right, I guess.
Yeah, it seems so. I mean, they must obviously think so. Let's see here. Anything else super crazy? I got this Elon Musk baby fur drama.
Yeah, I mean, we're like at an hour, so
Mhm.
I think we'll call it an episode.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the future, guys. I'm not as miserable as I once was. Feeling it's down bad. I've healed a little bit. That little bounce off the floor helped me out a little bit. So, guys, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for watching this gameplay footage behind me. Thanks, York, for coming back, dude. I really appreciate it, guys. And if you guys could like, subscribe, all that jazz, YouTube, repost, whatever, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Helps grow the channel, helps grow Sonic. So do your part, soldier. And we'll catch you next time on Friday.
See you Friday.
GMSONIC is Corval and Dracula Presley. GM.